Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm here with my good friend Andy, and we are continuing Andy's first-time read of Worm by Wildbow. Andy, how's it going, and what are we covering this episode?
Oh, it's going okay. Survived Arizona Statehood Day yesterday, so that's always good.
Nice.
Today we will be reviewing Arc 21, Imago. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, chapters 1 to 3. And as far as new business, Tony will join us for Arc 22. So looking forward to Tony being with us again. And we're working on another special guest for Arc 23. We'll have more to come on that as we get closer to doing that arc.
Yes, very excited to have some new voices joining us. So stay tuned for those, folks. And since we don't have any questions or comments this time, we will dive right into our review, chapter 1. And things are picking up immediately after the meeting at the gallery. Tattletale is got her spy glasses out there, and she's checking to make sure that Accord and his entourage are away from the scene and things are safe for them to have a discussion. And the team gathers around the table and they talk about a few things. Again, more table setting from Wildbow prior to things really popping off this chapter.
It was an interesting meeting, definitely at the end of the last arc. And so there is a lot of post processing, if you will, and trying to figure out where everybody was at. It seems like there was general agreement on how things were going, but maybe Skitter came on a little bit heavier than they expected. And
You think the team is right to express that concern?
well, they're in a tough spot, and since it is a team effort, Skitter is the field general, if you will, and Tattletale's kind of the operations person,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still a little bit of a democracy, and so there's bound to be different feelings on how things should go. This is totally unexplored territory, right? These are villains taking over a city. PRT, which was kind of this ivory tower, has definitely crumbled quite a bit and is showing some flaws in the foundations. So there's just a lot of moving parts, and people are going to be interpreting it in different ways. But the more I thought about it, the more I like Skitter's approach.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So I was thinking about it like a risk game.
Mm-hmm.
So when you thought about all the different villain groups and the PRT and the Endbringers, there were a lot of different armies on the board. And at the beginning of the story, the Endbringers and then the Slaughterhouse Nine were the heavy hitters, and
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of pummeling everybody right and left. And then the Undersiders felt like they were kind of backed into a corner, and they had to take their shot. They turned in their set of cards, they got their extra armies, and they started going for it. And they pushed back on stuff and everything, but they have a good grip on a good chunk of the land, but they haven't really solidified anything. They have some weak supply lines, if you will. They have some areas of vulnerability, possible places where they can be flanked. And Skitters kind of look at it like, well, we gotta make a buffer zone. We've got to make a statement
I see.
and whittle people down around us a little bit to make sure that we don't have somebody just rolling us up and pushing us out.
Yes, I see what you're saying there. I have feelings about Skitter at this point. The listeners, those who know what lays ahead. So yeah, I have feelings, but let's let me not let me not go down an unnecessary path too far. Tattletale does a pretty good job of giving the team her assessment on the teeth and the fallen and what each one of those groups bring to the table and what Accord's all about. And she at one point lays out how she doesn't understand where Accord gets his people from, these high powered capes. We know he's just calling up Dial Cape and getting a new vial whenever he needs. But her
Uber
assessment's
capes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I need 5 of these, and then I need 3 of these, and I need 1 of those with the kung fu grip, and yeah,
Oh
I
goodness.
just aged myself with that comment, but anyway, she gives the team an outline of what their opponents look like, and that's where Skitter lays out her approach for dealing with these guys. So the team, as I put in the notes there, to kind of gear up for war. Parian's, you know, she's, I guess you would call her an adjunct member of the Undersiders. Is that the correct way to use that phrase there?
Yeah, I think that works, or associate.
Hmm.
But yeah, she's I can't think of that term. Yeah, it's like they've annexed her
Yeah.
her territory, I guess, and kind of
Sure.
said, "All right, you're part of the Undersider City now."
Mm-hmm.
But she's not fully bought into it yet.
No.
And you can't blame her. She hasn't been through the meat grinder like they have. I mean,
All right.
she's had her own experiences for sure, but nothing like what these folks have gone through. So,
Yeah, this was never her game plan.
exactly. Yeah. So she's kind of just trying to make the best of a bad situation. And she's a little bit put off by, I think, how the evil lair is all kind of coming together. It's like, hold on a minute. I thought we were all just kind of playing at evil, but
No,
this whole villain thing seems like you're both feet in it now.
yeah. And her thing is she was forced into it, and she's still trying to take care of the people that she cares about the most. And hey, I'm doing the best I can. And I think I may have been a little perhaps a little not irritated, but come on, Perry, you gotta get with the program kind of with her during this read. Because I know the stakes, perhaps that's kind of shadowing my feelings about her now. The team, okay, let me see if I can phrase this. So you agree with Skitter as far as going on the offense against the PRT and their other enemies. Do you think she came across as dismissive of their concerns about her emotional state? Did she kind of duck around that without, you know what I mean? Not being,
Yeah.
she just kind of
Um,
push it to the side.
I can see that. I mean, obviously she's gone through pretty significant disruption in her life,
Mm-hmm.
with being outed by the PRT and having to pretty much say goodbye, perhaps forever, from her dad. And it's totally understandable that the rest of the team would really be focused on that and try to draw her out about that and get her to process through that a little bit. But it's almost like Skitter is kind of in data analysis mode.
Okay.
And this is just one more data point. And in retrospect, it's kind of like, well, it was always a possibility. And now it's done. I can't put
Mm-hmm.
that genie back in the bottle. Let's take care of business. So it doesn't seem like she's stuffing down her emotions or trying to keep herself busy so she doesn't think about stuff. I'm not getting that vibe.
Okay.
But I see where Orion is coming from too,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that the whole situation is kind of destabilized. And so it's reasonable to think that the Undersiders could kind of just keep gently feeding the chaos and it would kind of maintain the status quo. Do a little bit to bug those folks, do a little bit to undermine that group,
Mm-hmm.
do a little bit to encourage these folks. Don't make yourself too much of a target. Don't make it too obvious that you're trying to rug pull other folks a little bit, and consolidate a little bit,
Hmm.
so kind of the opposite of the way I play Risk, kind of pull back a little bit, build up the armies a little bit, make sure you've got your continent locked down or whatever, and then take a little bit here, a little bit there, let them take a little bit, and then you get your next set of cards, and then it's time to go. It's the other side of the coin, I guess, a little bit. And I think I relate more to Skitter saying she's just tired of being counterpunching. She wants to just be the one throwing the first punch for once, and feels like she's got the strategy to just be a one punch knockout kind of thing.
I do like that Tattletale and Brian did their best to make sure she realized they weren't attacking her or
Hmm.
not coming down on her hard. But by the same token, Brian makes this one point that I thought was really good, and he says here, "I have one thing to say. Think it over or keep it in mind. We made it further than most groups do. Some villains set their sights high and they fall. Others try to eliminate their enemies and get eliminated in turn. Still others set their mind on a goal and they strive for it, only to get worn down along the way." I mean, that's a valid point. They, as a group, are in uncharted territory. And a matter of fact, I may have missed that line that Tattletale said. Um, that feeds into what Brian's the point he's making. They're outside of what they normally do as a group, counterpunching as and trying to survive. And they're both of the mind, okay, if we're gonna do this, let's just go into it with eyes wide open, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think the line you're looking for is Telltale said, you're talking about changing our dynamic, and it's a
Yes.
dynamic that's been working. So, and that's a valid point. But to use a sports analogy, it's okay to just kind of trade baskets or trade field goals or whatever during most of the game. But when you're coming down to the fourth quarter, or you feel like it's time to make a move, then sometimes you just have to say, all right, this is where we shift gears.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can catch your opponent back on their heels a little bit. The PRT is reeling, the other folks are all new to the area or disjointed, and nobody knows. They're probably thinking the undersiders are going to just try to consolidate a little bit, take
Yeah,
a breather.
especially after the whole thing with Taylor being outed earlier in the day. So that would kind of feed into the impression that they're disjointed and out of sorts. And I think Skitter even brings that up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So why not turn the tables on that? If people expect you to be hunkering down, licking your wounds a little bit, catch them while they're napping, come out fighting, and say, all right, you punch one of ours, we're going to punch back.
Right. So they decide on a strategy to go forward, and they're going to split themselves up into three groups. And the operation for the night, as I noted, it was a girls' night out at the PRT. And Tattletale, Skitter, and Bitch grab a few of the dogs and go pay Director Tag a visit. Before we get into the assault on HQ, I wanted to make sure I understood a point you made last episode, and so correct me if I'm wrong on this. Regarding Director Tag, you were kind of under the impression he was one of those guys, one of those people who led from behind, and Pig O had made a statement about him at that point during the interlude. And do you
Hmm.
remember when Pig O had said that Tag was he wasn't a politician. He was a PRT former squad leader, and she considered him a general.
Yeah, I remember that.
I bring that all that long-winded explanation up to see if that colored your approach, your impression of him in this arc.
this arc seemed to kind of confirm what I was thinking.
Okay.
At a level where you're a foot soldier or even, a squad leader kind of level, that's one thing. And it requires a different leadership style oftentimes.
Right.
And as we see in the military and, in business, whatever, as people go up the ladder, they either have to adapt what they do to their role and kind of stay true to how they are, or they start running scared, basically. They
Mhm.
start trying to distance themselves. They remember that the heartache they might have seen when somebody in their squad went down, and now they're running 1,000 squads and they can't bear the thought of feeling that gut wrench all the time.
Okay.
And so they start saying, all right, well, they're all just kind of cannon fodder. I'm gonna just put them out there. We've got a job to do. And Pigo was a little bit like that too. I'm
Yeah.
sorry we got to nuke everything while you're there, but we got to stop them.
That's a jerk move.
Yeah. And so as we go through this, and Tag says, I'm fine getting the crap beat out of me as long as I give you a bloody nose.
Hmm.
That that seems like a pretty, the picture that came to mind was Captain America before he got the super soldier serum,
Right.
just getting the crap beat out of him. It doesn't gain anything. I mean, it shows that the person's really good at persevering, but from a someone who's a leader standpoint, that's resulting in a not much moving the needle with a lot of your folks going down.
Okay.
It just seems like it seems kind of like a fearful approach to things. I don't agree with Pigo's way of doing it either, but at least that's trying to take the bull by the horns and make things work out correctly. Being a punching bag doesn't seem like it's going to do much anything.
Okay. All right. The team, the squad of Skitter, Tattletale, and Rachel make their entrance into PRTHQ to go say hi to Director Tag. Boy, Skitter really kind of lays into all the civilians who were there, and I mean, she once again dispenses with Adamant and Sear, and any other cursory heroes that happen to be nearby. But again, as I said earlier, I have feelings about Skitter this arc. So she they make their way through the office. She comes to Director Tag's office, and he is in there with his wife, and the two of them have a nice conversation, if you will. Both of them laying down their cards on the table, and Skitter takes her mask off, and they talk, and this goes to that, I believe, some of the stuff that you
Hmm,
were bringing up.
definitely. Yeah. Just to touch on Skitter here,
Uh huh.
now that she's decided to go on the offensive, she's marshaling all her troops. She's trying to cover every angle, and she's planning out not only how to identify stuff that's possible showstoppers for them,
Hmm.
but prepared for eventualities, way things might go as they're engaged, and then also looking for after the engagement, how to continually send a message, if you will,
Yeah. Oh.
leave her mark on the situation. And so I kind of thought it was pretty masterfully done. And I think it showed by all that planning that she's really not doing this in a half-cocked manner, or that she's got emotional things kind of screwing with her at this point. It seems like she's just saying, all right, you guys were fine going below the belt. I'm going to show you that that's not okay, and that you guys are in a lot more precarious position than you thought you were. And everybody's going to see it. And so, yeah, she goes in there and she gets in front of Tag, and his wife is there. And, he just keeps going with, all right, well, I'll go after your family. And if
Yeah.
anybody's read any kind of cops versus robbers type stuff or seen any of those movies, that's not okay. When that happens, then blood flows in the street. And so Skitter's like, fine, I see you have a picture of your daughters right there. Want to talk about that? And then she goes after his wife in a way that definitely gets a response.
Yeah. I want to read this one section to kind of support your opinion of Tag, I think. This is immediately after Tag has said he'd bring in Danny anytime the Undersiders tried anything. And it's a war of attrition, Tag said. I'll find the cracks. I'll wear down and break each of you. If you're lucky, then 5 years from now, they'll remember your names, speaking them in the same breath as they talk about the kid villains who were dumb enough to think they could keep a city to themselves. So he's got his jaw set. She's not going to see through or reach him on any kind of level, I should say. Tattletale had come into the room and was like, "Look, girl, he's playing you. He's trying to get inside your head." Tattletale sees the situation for what it is. Nobody's going to come to any kind of terms of any sort. The Undersiders are on one side, and Tag and the PRT are on the other. And he calls her a thug at one point, and that's kind of where they leave it.
Yeah, it highlights kind of the path that Wildbow has brought us on. That we all wish it was on or off, 1 or 0, very easy to decide, but that's not the case. We're talking kind of quantum physics here. It could be anything. And so the best you can do is the best you can do. And Hag has decided that the best he can do is just keep it at as close to us versus them as possible. Whereas Skitter and the Undersiders have decided the best they can do is trying to make the city something livable and get it back on its feet.
But on their terms? Try to
somewhat, yeah. It reminds me of a lot of those post-apocalyptic kind of things where you end up with a little bit of like a martial law feel to things, but it's understandable because everybody's on edge, everybody's worried, everybody wonders what's going to happen next. And so you kind of got to have the military or whatever, the folks in charge being a little hard on things. And the PRT doesn't have the juice to do that right now. So I think the Undersiders are just kind of stepping into the vacuum here and doing the best they can. And the PRT, rather than trying to rebuild themselves and maybe get to a point where they can accept a handoff of some kind or some kind of detente, they're just trying to continue to undermine things. And even though it's just a losing effort at this point.
Yeah, that whole revelation, and we don't have to revisit that, but the whole revelation thing with Alexandria and the Cauldron and all the other capes, that just was the first domino to fall. So as we are moving toward the end of the chapter, Skitter and co are leaving the facility. Oh, right. Earlier in the chapter, Taggart pointed out he was calling in, they had heroes coming back to the site, and Skitter had said that she had called news crews, and she wanted the news crews to see that she and her team were walking away just as bad as they want to be. And as you pointed out, PRTHQ was going to be infested with critters for the foreseeable future. People are going to have bug bites all over them. And yeah, the PRT has been rendered impotent in the face of the Undersiders. So yay, sending Defiant and Dragon to a school. Good job.
Yeah, this is it just all the missteps by the PRT are just kind of like, oh, Skitter saying this is how you do it. You know, if you want to come to somebody's turf and like take them down, this is what it looks like.
Yeah. And now we'll move on to chapter 2. Rather than trying to go through kind of the timeline of this thing, let's ping pong around back and forth. There was a lot of emotional undercurrent running throughout this thing, from Tattletale trying to get Skitter to face things as reality, to Skitter's long emotional talk with her mom. Why don't you bring up some of the things that you felt were important plot points in any particular order?
This was a challenging chapter, that's for sure. I think it was, first off, it was tough to hear that, you know, Atlas is struggling a little bit.
Oh
Uh,
man, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I remember feeling that way my first read. I was like, "Oh, come on, man, no way." Sorry, go ahead.
it makes sense in hindsight, you know, that Atlas is a creation and there's no instruction manual, and so Skitter's trying the best she can, but there's really no precedent for this. And so I'd really hoped that she'd been able to find somebody that could help with this somehow, some kind of, you know, like not messed up bone saw kind of person that could um,
Sure.
I I don't know if that's even possible, but being able to tinker biologically is probably enough to push anybody off a little bit. I just felt bad for Alice, you know. So, but she's got Radley with her, and it's, I'm a dog person, you're a dog person.
Yeah,
Anytime you got a dog with you and you're having to deal with tough emotional stuff, that helps. You know,
absolutely.
you kind of feel like you got somebody on your side that's not judging you or anything. That's just, they're fully in your corner and they're comforting. And so I was happy to see Radley there. I didn't see it coming that she was going to end up at the cemetery, but I think Wildbow did a great job. This seems like a perfect time for this kind of thing where it's kind of like she's lost her other parent now.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense that she'd try to make amends or reconnect or whatever with her, with the spirit of her mom or the feeling of her mom, the
Yeah,
memories of her mom.
I wanted to ask you. You answered the question, but I was going to ask you about if you like the placement of this rather lengthy interlude, if you will, in between the kind of the setup and then the action chapter of things. Obviously, you
Mm.
feel this was a good location to have this discussion between her and the spirit of her mom.
Yeah, I think so because we were wondering and the team was wondering, hey, are you okay, Skitter?
Right.
How much did this mess you up? And we see this vignette here where she's talking to her mom's gravestone, and you know it's obvious that the internal turmoil is still there. The struggles are still there. She realizes things didn't go the way anybody expected them to, and she's not sure that things are going the way they should go, but she's doing the best she can, and she feels like she's got to do what she can. That
Hmm.
there's not a lot of people that are stepping up to help out or anything. So
She
I thought this was good.
she points out that the PRT didn't respond as harsh. They didn't come down as hard, apparently, in her opinion, on Kaiser and his squad of nuts or the ABB. And she kept coming back to this whole, they attacked a school, not attacked, but they came at me at a school. Why won't people do what I think they should do? How come they keep fighting me, kind of thing? And I was glad that Tattletale said, they could be asking the same question about you. The authorities could be looking at you going, why won't you play ball?
And that's always the tough aspect of being a visionary or feeling like you've got the bigger picture. Folks are used to things operating a certain way, and this scenario is unprecedented. So it's kind of naive a little bit to think that just doing it like you've always done it is going to everything's going to work out fine. We saw that at the end of the Echidna battle, they now have a portal to a totally unpopulated alternate Earth. So virtually an inexhaustible source of raw material. And so that anything, I'm surprised, like Wall Street didn't collapse at that point
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever. That just
Uh-huh.
throws everything off economically because, supply and demand, right? That's the thing that drives capitalism and to grossly oversimplify. But now you have virtually an infinite supply. And so anybody who wants to get involved in that could probably find a way to get involved in that. And so there's no reason anybody should be hungry or thirsty or anything, if people would just work together. But being able to wrap your head around big paradigm shifts like that is
Hmm.
not easy and not something that most people are even willing to look at.
Hmm.
And Skitter, I think, because of her powers, maybe not explicitly or something that she could articulate, but she sees a much bigger picture. And it's kind of like having a superstar athlete trying to be a coach.
Hmm.
They don't know why things work for them the way they work, but it bothers them that other people don't see what they see because it seems obvious to them. And so I think Skitter's just kind of scratching her head, but if she had a minute, I think, to think about it, she'd say, "Oh, wait, you don't have a hive mind running in the back of your brain like I do all the time. So, of
Hmm.
course, you're not going to see everything I see." Uh,
Interesting.
but yeah.
So let's move a little forward to the scene where she's okay. She and Radley have had a nice run. I did like the description of how she enjoyed moving, even though Radley was the one doing the running. The feeling of being in motion was comforting, and yeah, I somewhere in the distant recesses of my memory, I recalled how much I enjoyed going out on a Sunday run after when we were up in Flagstaff after a meet,
Mm,
coming down and recovering, going a nice long Sunday run. So yeah, I could relate to that. The feeling of being in motion is good.
mm-hmm.
And then she settles down and she finds herself at her mom's gravestone, and then she has that long interaction. And this is some, oh, I think it's probably the most self-reflection she's done in a long time, I think, in the story. You think?
Definitely. Yeah. And it really is a big shift from earlier ones because a lot of the earlier ones were filled with a lack of confidence or
True.
a lot of questioning, a lot of questioning of herself
Mm-hmm.
and questioning of, what was going to happen next and fear, if you will. Whereas this one, it has questions in it. There's definitely stuff out there, but it's more kind of, I don't know how I'm going to deal with it, but I know I have to deal. So it's more of a realistic approach or a pragmatic approach that I don't know why I'm in the position I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to whine about it like I used to. Why am I getting bullied? Why is this going on? Now it's just
I got to handle business.
exactly. I got to take care of business. That's a great way to put it.
Okay. We finally get the answer to the question, what was on the two notes that
Mm,
Dinah left for her.
yeah.
cut ties, and I'm sorry. And I did like that sentence, that statement she made as she was talking to her mom's tombstone. It says, "Let me tell you, Mom, if there are 2.5 words you don't want to hear from a person who can see the future, those words are 'I'm sorry.' It's terrifying." Oh yeah, you think?
Yeah. Wow. That's I mean, it could be worse, you know, but it can't be good.
Hmm.
But I think Skitter knew, based on the huge chance that it's going to be the end of the world
Hmm.
and all the other stuff, that this wasn't going to be a happy ending story probably. And so the I'm sorry could mean something that I'm sorry what's going to happen to you in the next 5 minutes, or I'm sorry that you tried to save me and thought things would be way better and they're not going to be.
Yeah, we shall see. So, as we're moving further into the chapter, a gentleman who appears to be a groundskeeper comes by, and a very touching human to human moment between the two of them, where he offers to make her some tea and bring her some paper, and she pens apparently a rather lengthy letter, and just that moment of kindness from this guy nearly leaves her in tears.
Well, yeah, this is one of those things where in a really well written story, you have somebody who is teetering on the possibility of kind of becoming heartless. And I think she even says something like that, where she says,
Hmm.
you know, she's got to just be cold. She's got to be not even thinking about, she's got to go piggo a little bit, you know, that I just got to take care of business and stuff. But then she's reminded by the groundskeeper that there is good in the world, if you will, that as hard as it is and as unpleasant it is to think about, going heartless isn't the way to go. You can't save humanity by becoming inhuman.
Right.
You've got to, as even though it might tear you apart, you have to keep fighting for trying to save people because you care about them. And so the groundskeeper represents everybody that she's got to try to save. That, you know, here
Hmm.
you've got this guy doing this lonely job in a desolate and sad place for the most part. And here he's reaching out to a total stranger and offering to make her some tea. And so that
Yeah, he sees
really,
how she's dressed, and you know,
right,
this scrawny girl in a dark costume with armor, and he's kind of like, at first, but then, as you said, you know, the humanity aspect of it kind of shines through, and yeah, this guy is the kind of person who's worth fighting for, kind of situation.
exactly.
And so now we will move on to chapter 3, which is the final chapter we're going to cover in this episode. And okay, yeah, Regent's got a crib. Apparently, he's got himself a throne room being put together, and people are in there doing construction for him. Yeah, I should say that this is where the next day, and Skitter and Imp and Regent are at his place, and they are getting ready to go out and take on the next task of their three different assignments they were going to do. Skitter goes there with a agenda in mind already. Obviously, she doesn't share it with them, but she wants to see how they're operating.
Yeah, ever the field general, you know,
Yeah.
she's got to review the troops, and she sees that Regent is living up to his name,
Hmm.
definitely going the royal route, and yeah, as you said, it has the whole audience chamber, throne room set up, casually tossing his scepter around, and yeah, to keep using the military analogy, it's like the general showing up, and then the colonel flipping his rifle in the air or something and catching
Yeah.
it. You're just like, oh man, what are you doing? Can you be a little more serious here?
She wants to see how they're going to function. How are they dealing with things? I did like the thoughts she had regarding the future of Imp and Regent, where Skitter's kind of like, what might they become? Later on in the chapter, she points out the fact that she feels that those two, are the scariest members of the group. And she brings up a good point where she's thinking about what if Tattletale was able to erase, via her contacts and her knowledge and her power, erase all vestiges of Imp in her civilian guise. She could be literally a ghost. What kind of an assassin would she become? She'd have a pretty bloody life ahead of her. She could in that scenario.
Yeah, this is Skitter definitely going down some dark paths with both of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Imp could be, as you said, the ghost in the machine. Just somebody that can't be picked up, can't be detected doing whatever, and that's some pretty scary stuff right there. And we saw some of that even back during the Slaughterhouse 9 sections, where it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, she's just slipping in with the super heavy hitters like it's no big thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's pretty creepy. And then Regent, she's talking about Regent's dad, and Regent has some of the same powers. And he says, I can delegate, and
Mm-hmm.
makes the comment, my dad managed it. And then Skitter's off thinking about, oh, yeah, let's think about how he managed that. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to work with you if you take that turn down the road. And then to top it all off, she starts thinking about, hmm, yeah. And then Imp and Regent are kind of hanging out together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What, what
Huh.
what might Brian feel about that? How
Exactly.
does Big Brother know that these two are, just hanging out? Oh God, I was just about to make a point. Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, my brain. Oh, okay, got it. Um, it's been a while since we've had this kind of detailed interaction with Regent. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to think back. We haven't been on a mission with him in a while, have we?
I think you're correct.
I mean, I'm thinking back
And
to Echidna or anything like that.
yeah, it's been like all the way back to Shatterberg kind of stuff.
Okay, it's nice to see him in the fore for a little while. I mean, he's not, as the story has evolved, he's not become one of the primary characters. He's not. I mean, even Rachel is more senior, if you will, in word count, I would think, than Regent.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that shows kind of the niche powers that Regent has.
Mm-hmm.
And also, his personality. He doesn't want to be kind of in the front line. He's not seeking the spotlight necessarily. And given his background, you can totally understand that.
Yeah.
He grew up with the guy who wanted all the spotlight. So that doesn't leave any spotlight for anybody else. And probably got slapped down if he tried to steal any of the spotlight. So he's fine kind of being in the background. The thing is, when he is exerting his power, though, it's messed up. And everybody else is kind of like, well, that's him doing his thing, that's what's going to work. And Skitter's the one that's having to say, no, I don't, that's not cool. So, I mean, I like Regent, okay, and I
Uh-huh.
think he makes a good part of the group, but I'm not shedding a tear that he's not more in the story.
I hear you. Their mission for the day is to go track down the fallen and deal with them. They're operating nearby Regent's territory. And so Imp and Skitter and Regent head on out as they're heading down the road looking for their enemies. That's where Skitter begins to think about what these two might end up becoming in the future. And eventually they do come across a couple of members of Haven and the Fallen doing battle. More unique capes with more interesting capabilities. Any thoughts on who do we have here? We had Rosary as she was doing battle with one of the Fallen there.
It was interesting, but I had trouble really connecting with it. I don't know if it's
Hmm.
just too many years of reading about, well, they fly or they have super strength or whatever, and it's harder for me to get the same feeling about some of these other things. It's interesting, but it's hard for me to integrate it maybe into my inner protectorate.
Your inner
Cape.
Cape geek.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean Rosary, what kind of matter manipulation, disintegration, and then reintegration above your head and dropping a truck on you. That's different. Okay, that's fine. So Regent and team, they get there. They make kind of quick work of Elagos, I believe it is.
Hmm.
I did kind of find it funny that the three of them, Skitter's using her bugs on the hero and the villain, and at one moment, Rosary materializes a car and climbs inside of it, and then Elagos uses his power on it. And the three of them are battling back and forth, looking for advantage against each other.
That was interesting. Yeah, usually you kind of have a two-sided battle, and now you've got a three-sided battle. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got somebody who's trying to counter one, and then the other person takes advantage of that. And then
Yeah.
it definitely, I think, plays into Skitter's hand because she's used to trying to split her mind and do multiple things, whereas the other folks probably aren't.
Mm-hmm. No, it's the enemy in front of them, and that's who they're attacking. And then, as you pointed out, Skitter can swarm clones and multitudes of bugs dealing with two enemies at once. So that plays into her hand. So after they get there and Skitter and the team settle the situation between Rosary and the member of the Fallen, Skitter makes her kneel and talks about our city, our rules. You don't come in here without contacting us first, and kind of lays down the undersider law. Necessary? What do you think? I mean, you had a strong feeling early on about her approach to this whole situation. Any thoughts when we got here?
Well, I'd like to step back a second, and I
Sure.
liked how she kind of laid the groundwork a little bit with Regent
Uh huh.
and said, "This is how we're going to approach it." And she says to him, "I'm going to ask you a question. I'll have my arms folded. I want you to lie."
Yeah.
And so she's trying to make things seem much more dire, perhaps, than they might be, or as bad as they can be, to
Hmm.
try to make sure. And so it's somewhat of an act. So she could come in and just, and I think this was what the in the first chapter folks were worried about, was that she just come down with the iron boot, and it's kind of like, oh, either follow our rules or get killed.
Hmm.
And she was kind of like, no, I'm sending messages. And so she's setting a stage here. She's creating an environment, and she wants people to get the message, maybe even more exaggerating what could happen, kind of thing. So I'm with it. I think this is good.
Yeah. You know what? To that point, the whole ruling through fear thing, and I think she once again references another villain. oh gosh, it was a Bakuda, and her idea
Mm.
of ruling through fear, and even Regent calls her out on. I think it's kind of messed up that you're referring yourself to a crazy bomb lady. You sure that's a good thing? But to support your point, she's able to do a little psyop on
Right.
PRT heroes and even villainous enemies, then yeah, that's less real work, though, less confrontations they'll have to deal with.
Right. And this has been done in a lot of stuff, but a dead enemy isn't going to tell any tales.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to spread the word that, hey, you don't want to mess with these folks because they're dead. They're not doing anything. People will assume various things. They'll come up with their own stuff. But somebody that you plant seeds in
Yeah.
and you let go will have that tale to tell, and they will tell it. And people will ask them, "Hey, you were there, Brockton Bay." And they're like, "Oh, hey, no, you do not want to go there."
Yeah.
And so it definitely works in their favor. And even people who are horrible, we can sometimes learn things from them. In sports, there's the whole gamesmanship thing, and
Sure.
I've never been a big fan of that. I want to try to win by using the skills that I have, not by trying to find loopholes or whatever. But there's a move in basketball, and I think I've only used it a couple times. I just happened to see it on a highlight the other day where a smaller person's driving the lane, the big guy's waiting there, getting ready to cut them off, and you act like you're going to throw them the ball. And 9 times out of 10, they'll flinch out of the way, and you've got a free layup.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cheesy thing to do, and it's not something, but, if the game's on the line and you're 6 foot flat and the other guy's 7'4", and you got to score this, then that might be the time to pull out a little bit of gamesmanship. So it doesn't make you Bakuda or some horrible thug on the court or whatever. It's just you're using what you need to use to try to secure the victory. So
That's kind of what you see her doing here.
exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. So she deals with Rosary, gets her to acquiesce. They've taken down one of the fallen. And as we're moving further down into the chapter, all of a sudden, she realizes that Imp is in trouble. She had told the two of them to stay close, and Imp gonna do what Imp is gonna do, and she goes off and she runs into Valifor, I think is how you say his name. He was a scary dude. Again, another stranger power, and seriously kind of frightening.
Yeah. This whole scene, I thought things were going to go really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Skitter was just considering what could happen to Imp. And then here we have somebody taking over Imp. It's just like,
Oh yeah.
oh no, this this could just go so bad so fast. This could be the end of the story right here.
Yeah,
But
no, this guy was this guy was dark, and Skitter talks about strangers and how dangerous they can be. And at one point during this conversation, when she and Regent arrive on the scene, he issues commands using his power to all the people who are standing nearby. And she is surprised by the fact that at the end of that command, he's telling these people, okay, when you're done, kill yourself. And that's crossing one of those lines that people fear from strangers.
exactly. And thank goodness that he isn't better at using his power, because when they've gone over his historical stuff and
Mm-hmm.
saying things like set fire to your workplace the next time your boss pisses you off, he could be planting these things all over the place,
Yeah.
like Bakuda did with the bomb. And you don't know who's going to be there, but instead he's not proactive enough. He could have snuck into town by himself probably and
Mm.
taken it over, and they wouldn't even know. they would be like, why is all this stuff going on? You know, but luckily he thinks small time.
Gotcha.
So he's just trying to do these things. But yeah, but then he crosses this line and it's like, okay, well now I can't just scare this one.
No. He orders Imp to try to kill the members of the Undersiders and then to kill herself when she's done. Imp comes running at the two of them. Skitter is using her swarm as a shield. I didn't understand that at first during my first read. Did you catch the? I think I might have missed something in my early understanding what Valifor was all about. But he's kind of a line of sight cape, I guess. His power, once he sees you, he lays eyes on you, and that's when his power can take effect, and you're under his spell, as it were. He commands Imp. She charges at the two of them, and then suddenly she makes a turn and veers off and heads back to him and physically assaults Valifor. Surprise.
Wow, yeah, that was a total shocker. They'd really played up his powers, and it seemed like he had everything lined up. And then she just comes at him all of a sudden, and he starts to try to give an order. But I was just like, how is this even happening?
Yeah. And turns out that Regent's actually controlling Imp. That's a whole thing. Imp had given Regent permission to try his power on her because she wanted to see what it was like. I mean, that's a very kid thing to do, I guess. And it came in handy. Now, Skitter is, again, this heightens her concern about, I wonder if her brother knows what's going on between these two. Maybe I'll have to delicately bring this up to Brian at a future date. But it was a good deal. Regent was able to control Imp and get through this guy's power, and they took him down.
Yeah, we're going to get into something that is very disturbing here in a minute, but this was almost as disturbing to me. I mean, Skitter was just contemplating which direction these folks could go. And now you're saying, well, what if the person who went off the rails controlling people controlled the ghost?
Oh,
Then that's just, yeah. And then, yeah, like you said, it's a kid thing. They're just goofing around, but
there's some, yeah.
That could go horribly wrong so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't even want to think if Brian knew about this. I mean,
I don't think anything good's coming out of that conversation.
No. And so now we've got this secret that has to be kept, and that's never good either. So this whole thing was very, very disturbing. And I was like, oh well, at least that's gonna be the worst thing in the chapter. I was wrong.
No, psych. Yeah, so Imp takes him down, punches him a couple of times, kicks him a few times. Skitter, initially she has some bugs cover his eyes so he can't stare at people and use his power. And as they're debating what to do with this guy, okay, Skitter does the eye thing, only 1,000 times more disgusting than just carving dude's eyes out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is so nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, carving bits off of people is horrific. I mean, I can't even imagine. I have a pretty strong stomach, and I've had my share of injuries. You've been there for some of them.
Yeah.
You got very grossed out. But yeah, the whole thing where she took the eyes out, it was just like, oh my gosh. But this is giving me the EBGBs just thinking about it again.
Yeah, I'm with Imp. She was freaked out too, and yeah, girl, I hear you. Get him off me. Get him off. Get him off. After she does this thing to him, they do have this conversation where Skitter's trying to make sure that Imp is Imp and Regent's not controlling her anymore. And she's like, okay, well, we'll say something that only Imp would know. And then there was that whole, oh, you got a mole on your back thing. Okay, call me an old man, folks. You know, just kind of turn my head sideways and go, okay, yeah, I'm not sure I needed to have that in the story, but whatever. Wildbow wrote it there, so yeah, y'all can call me an old man and make fun of me. I'm a little squeamish about that, but we'll move on past it. They take this guy after having destroyed his vision, or at least impaired it, and they take him back to Rosary and turn him over. And Skitter says, "All right, dude, here he is. Leave our town and don't come back."
Yeah. And she's trying to show Regent and Imp that, by making folks paranoid, that, that's a better way to go than trying to directly control them. And she's trying to make sure that Regent is on board with that as a way to make sure that he's not going to go off the rails and follow his dad's footsteps.
Yeah, he was pretty irritated with her toward the end of this when they were discussing what moves to make with Belfour, and he was like, "Look, just give me your suggestion on this. Don't try to buffalo around, and I know why you're here. You're just here to see how I act. Quit playing games. Tell me your suggestion." Later on, she asked it to make sure that they're still cool, and he's kind of like, "Yeah, sure," which is a very Regent response given the situation. Kind of, as she says, non-committal. As we're moving toward the end of the chapter, non-committal, but hey, she didn't expect anything else from him. Meanwhile, Imp is still being grossed out by the situation, but yeah, that's their adventure for the day. They sent a message to Haven, and they took down the Fallen.
Yeah, this is a very interesting way to make this happen. I think they've done a really good job of kind of attacking on both fronts.
Mm-hmm.
They've sent a message to the PRT that they can't do anything. They should just rebuild and leave the Undersiders alone. And then the folks that are trying to muscle in and aren't willing to get on board, they've gone and dealt with them in a very physical manner and sent messages that are very, very creepy.
Yeah.
Won't be soon forgotten.
Yeah, well, at least that's the Fallen. So still to come are the Teeth. So
Right.
We'll have to see what they do, what Team Undersider does to deal with them. And that brings us to the end of this chapter. Any final thoughts on this 3-chapter segment we covered this episode?
Well, I think, as you pointed out, we hadn't seen a lot of Regents, and so it was good to have a reminder that he's a part of the group and he's got significant skills.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, those skills definitely creep me out. And, combined with Imp is just a horrific thought. So that is going to be in the back of Skitter's mind, I think, as much as mine, and how to try to broach the subject with Brian. I don't know how that's going to work out.
We'll see. All right. And that brings us to the end of part 1, folks. In part 2, we will be covering chapters 4, 5, and 6. And we hope you'll join us for that. So for now, I guess we're done and we will be signing off. Thanks as always for spending time with us, folks. If you're throwing us on while you're driving around, or you come home at the end of the day and you just want to check us out, hey, we appreciate you spending time. And those of you who like to send us comments or questions, hey, we love hearing from you. So any folks who are new to the podcast and you want to contribute something, by all means, please feel free. And we hope everyone will return for part 2. And until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in chapters 4, 5, and 6. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.